Hello all and welcome back to another wonderful video. Today I want to talk about another species because this is species in depth. Now this species that we're going to be covering today is Asiinae. Now I couldn't pronounce this at first and I still gonna have trouble with it, so forgive me if I mispronounce it a couple times throughout the video and stuff like that, but it's very hard to pronounce and it's kind of a weird word. They told me how to pronounce it and I still get it mixed up and still get it messed up and everything like that, so please forgive me if I mess it up at any point. But we're gonna be talking about Asiinae, and this is a very interesting species because there's a couple of things in it that just made me laugh, and I don't know if it should make me laugh, but it does. So before we get into this species here, let me know in the comments below if you want me to discuss your species or another person's species, and I will add it to my list. I have a pretty big list going on right now, so I will try to get to them eventually, but it may take a while to get to your species or the species you want me to do. Go ahead and leave comments below for a species anyway, because if you give me more comments for a species in particular, then I might move it up on the list. So moving on to the Asiinae. Now the Asiinae, I want to talk about a little bit of their lore and their habitat and stuff like that. We're going to go on to their diets, and then we're going to just give my thoughts and general ideas and stuff like that to the species, and that's going to be the video. So let's start with the habitat of these species. Now the habitat and living arrangements and everything like that of the Asiinae are very interesting compared to some of the other species we've done so far. They normally live in very large forests, stuff like the Amazon forest, the sequoia forests of California, which is where I think some things get kind of funny because they are very specific on what kind of forest they normally live in, which is kind of funny to me. They'll live in these very large forests, sometimes underground, sometimes in like these weird hive things, and these nests usually include queens, their queen, their different rooms, or the biggest / oldest Asiinae room where the biggest rooms of the hive are. So essentially the oldest, biggest Asiinae get their own room basically in the hive. So the food room, where all the food is stored away from the others and usually kept for later use. The sleeping quarters, as they put it, is in quotations for some reason. There's ground nests as well, like I mentioned. They can go on for miles, usually hold many more Asiinae. They can live and they're just much more common than you would find them in trees, is what they're saying here. So the hives hold up to 10 to 15 Asiinae, and the ground nests can hold up to 30 to 40 each. Let's kind of talk a little bit more about the lore and a little bit more facts about them. The Asiinae are a bug-like species that live deep underground and bee like hives or in giant trees, like I mentioned earlier. They are quite young, only existing for, about 230 years. They haven't been around for a very long time. They have a common ancestor in the bee and wasps. They are about the size of an average house cat, and they're nocturnal. They're actually nocturnal. They have these glowing eyes, and they can make these loud clicking noises from deep in their throats. The Asiinae never stop growing. They just don't stop growing. The oldest actually is about the size of a German Shepherd, and they also have the brightest eyes and the quietest clicking. Their exoskeleton is weak, and they're easy to kill because they're so old. Now the creatures are quite friendly to pretty much anything, which I find kind of contradictory to the whole like diet, but we'll get into the diet later. So the creatures are quite friendly to pretty much anything, but they can get aggressive when messed with in the wrong way. Very similar to how you would expect a common bee to act. So basically, if you upset them, they might attack. And they can also live in water, which is a very interesting fun fact that I think adds a little bit of specialness to this little species here. The fact that they're able to, exist in water when they're very bee-like and everything like that. I just find that very interesting. So the height differences between the oldest Asiinae and the youngest Asiinae are about 2 to 3 feet. So you have a baby Asiinae, they're about 1 foot, and then the older ones are about 2 to 3 foot. You find baby Asiinae born in cocoon-like eggs. They're born in groups of 5. So these eggs are like, I guess, the way they word it makes it sound like there's about 5 Asiinae inside a single egg at any time. But the babies also have the strongest skin too, so that's a pretty interesting little fact there. But that's all the facts that I have for them apart from their diet, and that's what we're going to move on to next. So the Asiinae usually eat small mammals and birds. That's the very first line when it comes to their diet. Now, this is what I'm talking about when I mentioned earlier how they're very friendly to other creatures. This, I guess, can kind of still be true for both. You know, you can still eat small mammals and birds, but at the same time, they are friendly to these other creatures. That's what feels a little bit contradictory to me, but I digress. This is what their diet is. They usually eat small mammals and birds, and they will only eat plants if they have to. Usually the giant sequoia leaves in California's Sequoias National Park. Now, this is again where I kind of laughed a little bit because it's very specific in what they eat. They will eat small mammals and birds, and then giant sequoia leaves in California Sequoia National Park. Why is it that? They do eat the Amazon's leaves too, as well. So in the Amazon rainforest, they'll eat those as well. So the Asiinae are unable to farm. They can't farm, so they don't really do that. They just kind of have to rely on these leaves and this hunting of small mammals and birds. Now, the Asiinae can go up to 2 months without food, but only 3 weeks without water. So without food, they can survive 2 months, and without water, they can survive 3 weeks. Now, babies and elders need food and water a lot more. They need food a lot more often, and can go up to 3 weeks without food and 4 days without water. That's a pretty interesting lore when it comes to their diet and everything like that. Normally, these things are very short and simple. Like, oh, they eat leaves. That's it. You know, usually I see a lot of like lore when it comes to diet. It's just like, oh, there's just leaves. But this leader decided to, you know, go the extra mile and get a little bit more specific, and I like that. I kind of laughed about the whole California part, but that's besides the point. On to something else, a little bit more to lore, but it's something that I haven't addressed in pretty much any of the other videos, I don't think, but their medical situation. Now, the Asiinae do not have any medicine. If an Asiinae gets sick, they are very likely to die. They just try to ignore the fact and only have berries to try to fix the sickness. So basically, if they get sick, they try to pretend they're not sick and try to eat like berries and stuff like that to try to feel better, but they don't have medicine because they don't understand that. The medical situation is very interesting because I don't think I've seen that in any of the other species that I've covered so far. So yeah, props to them on that as well. So moving on to behaviors. So the behavior of the common Asiinae is very friendly. Like I said earlier, they were kind of friendly to other creatures. They're very playful with children, but serious with the elders. They respect their elders. The only way Asiinae ever get aggressive is if their kids or them are attacked. So if you attack their kids, they're going to be very, very aggressive to you. If they're attacking themselves, they will also be very aggressive towards you. And they will bite. They have claws and stuff like that, so they will claw down the attackers. They'll bite the attackers, that sort of thing. Elders and babies are very, very happy, but elders can crack down and get serious. The elders, they're all funny. They're all fun and happy and everything like that, but the elders seem to be the most serious of the group and everything like that, and I think that comes from their age and their wisdom from their age and everything. But other than that, there doesn't seem to be much more about the Asiinae. So let's go ahead and go into what they look like. So I'm going to put up an image of what they look like now, and I'm just going to kind of give my thoughts and everything about them. So this is what an Asiinae look like. At least this is an example that I was given by the creator of the species. Now, this is actually kind of interesting. I can kind of see where the claws are. They put the paws in there. That's like the 4th species in a row that put the paws in there, and I'm happy because paws are cute. So they have the paws, they have the claws, and they have the fangs. They have the fangs because they have sharp teeth. They have the claws because they obviously have claws, and I think that's done really well. They obviously have these wings. I don't know how much I feel about, I don't know how I feel about the wings themselves, because I feel like if you're doing a bug-like species, you would be more inclined to use the changeling wings, since when you actually use them in game, it more resembles an actual like a bug and everything. But I don't really fully know why they chose that. I don't know if there's like rules on like you can use any kind of wings or what the situation is on that. I probably should have looked at that, but I didn't. But they have this like dragon kind of wing here, this bat pony wing, if you will, which I don't know how to feel about that, but I digress. It's still good, and it's still important because obviously they have to be able to fly because they're a bug-like species that live in nests very high in the trees. So the antennas obviously are an obvious addition that you would pretty much have to have. I like the idea that they kind of have a tail but don't really have a tail. This allows them to kind of fit their whole like bee and everything like that. It almost looks like a stinger in a way, which I don't know if is intentional or not. I imagine it's not. They didn't say anywhere in their lore or anything like that they had stingers. This weird collar thing that they have on their neck, I think that's good too, but something about it seems unnecessary in a way. I think I kind of know what they're trying to do. I think they're kind of trying to add a little bit more detail to that, maybe make some kind of like fluff or something. I don't know exactly what they're trying to do with that, but I kind of like it nonetheless. As for everything else, I kind of like the hair and the ears and everything like that. I think this is a good species. I think if I looked at this, I would, maybe at first I would look at it and think, yeah, that's a nice OC. But I think if I looked at it, again, I think I would see that this is definitely a species or something is going on with this, and it's not just like the only one of its kind. So I commend them on how well they were able to put this species together. I think this species is actually done pretty well. It's probably one of the best species that I've done in one of these species in depth, at least when it comes to how well structured everything is and how well put together they have everything, because they have pretty consistent lore overall with how they live and everything like that. They have a very specific diet, which I haven't seen in the other species. I guess technically the Caribous kind of had a very specific diet when it came to stuff like get energy from like the moon and stuff like that. I guess they kind of got specific with stuff like that, but I feel like the Asiinae went a little bit further than the other ones did when it came to stuff like information, because they even told me stuff about their medical situation, which for some reason I cannot think of the other species actually doing anything like that. But overall, I love this species. I think this is a really nice species. I love the fact that this is probably the first one I've done that isn't robotic in some way or cyborgish in some way. I don't know what the word which should be, but I love how it's not just some cyborg, or it's not just some like robot or something like that, or doesn't have any kind of like robotic parts in it or anything like that. I really love that, because it seems like there's too many species that just like, oh, it's a cyborg of this, or it's a creature of this. And I love the idea that they were able to be like, hey, bees and wasps, what if they evolved to be more pony-like? And there you go. That's what an Asiinae is. So yeah, that's gonna do it for the video, I think. Till next time, please like, subscribe, share, do those wonderful things, because when you do those wonderful things, you get access to wonderful content such as this. But that's not all you get. That's not all you get. You also get to become wonderful yourself, and I think we all want that. So do those wonderful things, and until next time, stay wonderful.